Well, hello people, and welcome to a little analysis video of the recent gameplay trailer that was unveiled for Cities Skylines 2, which now has its official release date of the 24th of October this year, which is incredibly exciting, right? And a lot sooner than I expected it. But either way, let's dive into the trailer that was released over the weekend, and we'll just give some thoughts and feelings on it, shall we? So the trailer opens with this pretty cool interchange, and by the way, if you don't know, $2.20 built this city. Like, what a gig to land. How cool is that? But first of all, we can see this big flyover, very American looking roads first of all, isn't there? And we can also see speed markings here as well, which is brand new to the game. And also the intersection markings seem a little more fluid this time, definitely have intersection marking tool vibes. How autonomous those markings are, of course, we don't know yet, but interesting to see. The ramps and the curves just look a lot smoother than in CS1. And then we're greeted with this shot here where there's a little bit to unpack. Of course, we've got two trains moving back and forth here. One appears to be passenger, while the other is definitely some kind of freight train. And a couple of things to notice, the rails look a lot more realistic, certainly the train models as well, especially this freight train here too. The roundabout at the top of the road just has a nice little sort of filler in the middle, doesn't it? Again with what appears to be more intersection marking tool markings. And also a new style of suspension arch up in the top left here as well. And the buildings here look very sort of New York to me, don't they? They have that kind of like 3-story apartment vibe. And we can also see a couple of cars knocking around over here as well. And just the general theme of the video here is things just look a lot more realistic, a lot less cartoony than CS1, which in my opinion is definitely a good thing. And then trams, yes please everyone. So we can see a tram moving across the junction again, and a different type of roundabout filler. This time it's concrete. Exactly how we select that is yet to be revealed. But it's nice to see that the tram intersection or the tram lines just flow straight across the junction. That's really cool, and again, much more realistic looking vehicles and buildings all around for us to see here. So this shot here as the map fades out is pretty interesting. The maps, at least from this perspective, seem to be a lot larger, don't they? I believe it's confirmed to be smaller tiles, but we can unlock pretty much all of the map with a total of, I think it's 441, I'll confirm it in the edit. But nice maps, and we can also see what appears to be kind of a pre-built harbour here on this island out in the bay. Whether or not that comes with the map or something that $2.20 built, I'm not sure, but interesting that there seems to be infrastructure planned for ports already in the maps. So now we get into our gameplay, right? It is very cool. So first of all, we can see some terraforming going on here, and brush size and brush strength are now included, which to me kind of shows that better, extra, more landscaping tools has now been embedded into the base game, which is definitely a good thing. And the second tab here seems to be kind of a grass square with a little bit of a grass sprite on it. So perhaps some kind of surface painter, maybe a bit of grass or sand or gravel embedded into the terrain tools now as well. And we can see with the menu open that the little spade on the toolbar UI, which speaking of the UI looks a lot cleaner, doesn't it? It seems to be indicating our terrain tools. So this was something really cool as well, wasn't it? They drew out this preset grid, and we can see a whole bunch of new options down here in the bottom left. So we do seem to be retaining the original straight, curve and freeform tools. However, there are now 3 new tools alongside those tools. So what they're referring to, I'm not sure. But we can see that to draw this grid out, that big grid tool is selected. Elevation is now also sort of slightly different, isn't it? It's no longer that tiny little white bar. You can now specify the exact number of meters that you want, which is handy. And a whole bunch of new snapping options, for which, from first impressions, we can see snap to grid and angle, what the others are referring to. Not entirely sure. Let me know what you think they mean down there. And then we can also see the road menu for the first time here too, where we can quite clearly see pipes under the roads, or power lines at least, so I'm hoping that that means that drawing pipes now just comes with the roads, so we don't have to waste any nodes on those anymore. And also something very exciting I found here, there is quite clearly a parking tab within the road menu, which is great that it's pretty much confirmed now. Parking is part of the base game for CS2. Whether or not it's aesthetic parking to stop the pocket car in, or if it's, actually they're going to park and then walk to their destination, we don't know yet. We're going to have to wait and see on that. But even if it is aesthetic, at least it's there in the base game. And then this little clip here, he draws the road directly across another road and it automatically intersects, which is very much like the intersect nodes functionality of the network multi-tool mod, isn't it? And another little point on these roundabouts too, you can definitely kind of see the road wear from where the cars will be driving around the roundabout. And especially on the roads where you can see it just looks slightly more worn. It's a slightly lighter colour of grey. Whether or not that's intentional or just the design of the roads, again, not sure, but it's a nice design and seems a lot more seamless to sort of develop road networks than in Cities Skylines 1 at least. And we can see those same selection of tools down here now, apart from this time we have the introduction of a parallel mode, so confirmed that the parallel road tool is now embedded within the base game. So this shot here, as it transitions, is really interesting. You kind of get a good sample of all the different buildings and roads here. We can also see some paths, yes please, down in the bottom left there. Absolutely wonderful. One thing that did sort of take my interest from this shot right here is this particular intersection. This looks pretty complicated. Exactly how much work is required to get something like that, of course we don't know yet. But looks very intersection marking tool heavy, doesn't it? Lots of little slip lanes and roads and markings at that wider junction. And we can also see a little repeated tree pattern in there as well, which is nice. So now we look at our zonings for the first time, which is very interesting. So there now appears to be 6 to 8 deep zoning tiles, which is much bigger than the 4x4s we played with in Cities 1. I have seen a fair bit of disappointment knocking around online after this, saying that it's not really moved too far away from the grid sort of zoning system, which I know a lot of people aren't a massive fan of. It doesn't really bother me, to be honest, but at least it's deeper grids, which means bigger buildings, at least more realistic sizes. Another thing we can see here is quite a distinctive sort of different theme, isn't there? We can switch between European and American, which is quite cool. And also opens up the question as to what other themes may be added with future DLC. Maybe an Asian theme. I know there's been a lot of Japan-themed content creator packs for Cities 1, so perhaps we might see that for CS2 as well. Also on this screen, we now see a breakdown of the zonings, so it doesn't seem to be just low and high density anymore with our residential. There's now 6 different types of zoning, from what appears to be low density, wall-to-wall, single, taller, and then a little bit taller, and then much taller. You know, what they're referring to yet we don't know, but there seems to be a lot more differentiation now with our zonings, which is very cool. And we can also see those zoning paint tools as well, which looks to be a fill, and then a grid, and then a paintbrush, which is pretty similar to what we've got in CS1. So this shot right here is showing a couple of different overlays. So office zoning now appears to be purple rather than the blue that it was before. And there's a couple of different warning symbols. I can't quite make out what that looks like. It almost looks like a wad of cash, so maybe land value problems perhaps. And we can also see a differentiation between office buildings and office signature buildings. Whether or not a signature building is now the new name for unique buildings, of course we don't know, but interesting that they are separated out. So this shot here where he's building the flyover intersection is really cool. From what I can tell when he's drawing it over, there doesn't appear to be any kind of collision clashing. It's pretty seamless, and it looks as though precision engineering has now been built into the game as well, with all these angles and road guidelines matching up to help you create sort of perfect flyovers, which is really cool. Something I don't like about this particular shot here is if we look at all the zonings on the left, it's still pretty clear that the grids don't handle being placed on a curve very well, which makes filling out spaces that aren't perfectly gridded quite awkward. You're definitely going to need mods, I think, to fix that with Find It and Move It and whatnot to position things on corners how you like them. So a little bit of a shame that that still seems to be the process, but precision engineering is a nice addition. And we can also see a little sound barrier here as well, whether or not that's part of the network itself or something that $2 placed in, I'm not entirely sure. And our first example of an elevated rail line, which looks a little more realistic, doesn't it? Also appears to be single track as well, which is interesting. Maybe we'll be playing with some single track stuff in Cities 2. And a quick note here, just for all of the new networks for what appear to be highway roads, we've now got a selection of 5 bridges, it would seem like. So this was something that really caught my eye here with this bridge building tool here. This is a good example of the parallel mode being used. And we can see once that parallel mode is selected, that actually a couple more options open up with that as well, but down in the bottom left there. Again, what they're referring to, I'm guessing maybe the meter distance between the 2 networks. Not entirely sure, but super happy to see much more realistic bridges and simple quality of life road building tools like the parallel road tool now part of the game. Very happy with that. That is quite exciting. So now we come to universities, which are very cool. So from what I can tell here, the services seem to be much more modular. So we can see here, university is a massive complex that offers education for academically orientated sims. Has a $275,000 upkeep, so definitely seems to be a much more realistically scaled economy now, especially when we get to the power plant later on in the trailer as well. We can also see it's operating at an efficiency level. It holds a certain amount of employees and students, which is kind of similar to how campus works in Cities 1, isn't it? And we also have a dropout rate to contend with now as well. And also operating districts. Not entirely sure what that's going to refer to. Does that mean that only people within that district can attend that university? Not entirely sure, but interesting that it's specified on the university info panel, if you like. And we can also see that it has a little noise pollution value as well. In terms of the campus itself, it looks really nice. I like the style. There's clearly parking at the back here also. I'm not entirely sure how customizable these are going to be, whether or not the modular additions, we can see down in the menu here that he has an upgrade. Whether or not those upgrades can only go in certain places, I hope not, because that means everyone's going to end up with the same looking campus. So we're going to have to see and wait exactly how that works. So here in the video, $2 is placing a police station, and then everyone gets a gold star above their head as well. And those warning symbols also appearing back as well. What appears to be a wad of cash. Again, I'm probably not making it out exactly how it is. And there's also some more nice intersection examples down in the left here as well, which is nice, more seamless kind of markings as junctions join each other. And that also looks like a connection that wouldn't be possible in CS1 vanilla just because of the collision meshes with the roads. It seems to be a much smoother ramp coming off of the road, doesn't it? Which hopefully means that some form of anarchy is embedded within the game. So here we have the Tram Depot, which is amazing. A really cool Tram Depot reveal. It seems like a really nice, big, important building, doesn't it? And comes with all these little preset tram yards out the front. You know, this is detailing that we've done in Cities 1 to detail a Tram Depot. It now seems to be built into it as well. It's got a little bit of parking. And everyone gets a little thumbs down as well, I'm guessing, as it's placed, which I'm assuming that is replacing the unhappy face because he has placed a Tram Depot so close to residential. I'm assuming that means that they don't particularly like it, but of course that could be wrong. So now we get our first look at the public transport overlays. So it shows you the line and where that particular vehicle is on the line. Of course, you can set the schedule like you can in Cities 1, be it a day-night line or vice versa, the colour. Ticket pricing, assigned vehicles, and then you've got a little bit more of a breakdown. It seems pretty similar to CS1 to be honest, but it's just a much cleaner UI, isn't it? Much more cleanly laid out for us to just take that information in. So I'm happy with that. I definitely like the UI improvements that appear to have been made here. And now we come on to a little bit of residential information. So again, this definitely appears to be the American theme, I would think, although up in the top right here, does appear as though there's a little bit of asset repetition going on, but you know, it happens in the real world, doesn't it? So hopefully there is a good variation of assets. We don't see that happening too often. So let's take in some of the information that we've got on screen here. We can break down the demographics to children, teens, adults, and seniors, which I'm pretty sure it's the same in CS1, isn't it? But also a new education level as well. There's now poorly educated, educated well, and highly educated too. And a little bit of information, that education level determines the citizens' job opportunities, wages, and their work efficiency. Interested that wages seems to be highlighted as if that might be a new mechanic for the game. And then we can also see average wealth. There is 25 residents living within one of these tower blocks, which definitely seems a little bit more realistic. You'd expect something like that in cities to maybe hold 10 or 15 people. So seems to be holding a lot more sort of realistic level of population in little sort of 3-4 story apartments like that. So this is something I found really cool. Again, we're returning to a service building, this time a coal power plant that is quite clearly modular. And we can see a number of upgrades here, including different turbines and filters and whatnot. Very cool. Again, 140,000 per month upkeep, much more realistic upkeep cost rather than 1,500 a month like it is in CS1 at the minute, or a week, whatever it is. And again, we can see an efficiency breakdown, the number of employees, how much electricity it's producing, things and information we used to in CS1, and also it has a tonnage storage of coal now, which is cool. And here as well, we can also see that the power plant is causing high ground air and noise pollution. I'm desperately hoping that that noise pollution mechanic has been reworked because it's massively unrealistic in CS1. No one will live near the tiniest metro station or a train station when they totally do in the real world, especially in the inner cities. So I'm hoping that's been overhauled. We'll have to wait and see. But very cool looking power plant, and also these power lines coming out of it as well. It seemed pretty nice. But I'm a huge fan of the modular services. I've been asking for that for CS1 for a long time, and I hope that extends out to police and fire and everything else as well. And hospitals, it'd be nice to add sort of a maternity unit onto a hospital, for example, that perhaps affects the birth rate in the city. Of course, all hypothetical, but you can sort of see where they're taking the service buildings here, right? So here we now see an example of the air pollution overlay and what is quite clearly a rail yard down here in the bottom left as well, which is very cool. We can also see the rails going into buildings, which is kind of like the new warehouse that we got recently. So happy to see some sort of proper industrial infrastructure now appearing in the game. And also look at the smoke animation as well, like really thick grey smoke pouring out of these factories that are down there. And the graphic overlay here is just showing the air pollution, isn't it? Although interesting that wind speed and direction might now play a part in where that air pollution goes, which is quite interesting. And now we've got another overlay here as well, which is definitely covering the police and sort of jail prison availability, isn't it? Don't think there's anything in here really that's massively different. We can see the number of criminals in jail, how much coverage you've got. And here for the first time we can see the traffic flow interface, which looks a lot cleaner, doesn't it? I'm not really one for sort of looking at traffic numbers and whatnot. You guys that watch my videos know we're very aesthetically focused on the channel. If it looks cool, we're happy. But, we don't really have traffic problems anyway. So hopefully this is a little bit more cleaner way of looking at it. But not massively interesting to me, traffic flow, to be fair. This is an interesting screenshot, this next one here with the industry stuff. So there's now a couple of different resources. Looks like we can go to animals, sort of wheat, I'm guessing, vegetables, flowers, logs, or oil, etc. So a few more natural resources to play with. And we can also see that wood and fertile land now have a renewal rate, which means I'm guessing that you can no longer endlessly farm forestry and farming. Maybe we now have to give our farm fields kind of an off season so they have a chance to replenish their minerals and resources and whatnot, so you can continue to farm them, which is very realistic to the real world, of course. You can't endlessly farm a field, you have to let nitrogen and whatnot replenish within the soil. So that's how I'm perceiving that mechanic. The same with wood as well. So it looks like those two industries are no longer kind of endless. You do now have to pay attention to how often they renew. And then there's a little shot here where we can see some fencing, which looks like it's part of the asset. Looks like a little chain link number. Hopefully we'll get access to that. We'll have to wait and see. But great looking truck here, quite an American looking truck, isn't it? It's got a lot of logs on the back there, and what appears to be a couple of little forestry buildings sat over here. And a quick note here for the tree palette, there seems to be quite a few different number of trees knocking about in the base game, which I'm happy with. Even a few Palavan pine looking trees out there too. And then here as well we can see that a semi-truck has 25 tons of cargo on board, which is cool, and you can follow it, you can see who owns it and where it's going, just in a slightly different interface than what it is in CS1. I'm assuming that those destinations are other cities, or I guess it could be another district. Not entirely sure, hasn't been confirmed, but there's also something else to note here as well. Just look at the kind of scale of the maps. We've got some real kind of switchback in country roads knocking around here, which definitely kind of hammers home the point of the map seem much larger now, so we can create very distinctive areas from the metropolitan downtown to a countryside highway. Hopefully that's a little bit more possible now with hopefully increased map sizes. And then this shot zooms out here, we can see a couple of different things, definitely a larger stadium down here by the coast. And something that interested me was the number and variation of suspension arches that we've got spanning the rivers here. There's some Golden Gate looking structures, some more kind of Brooklyn Bridge suspension arches as well. So I'm a big fan of that. Definitely end up using the 6-lane suspension arch way too much in Cities 1, so it's nice to be able to differentiate between them now. So there we go, guys. That is the official gameplay trailer that we received over the weekend for CS2. I'm really excited by it. There seems to be a lot of improvements, which is very exciting indeed. There definitely seems to be a much bigger focus on city simulation rather than city building, which could be a cause for concern for me. I'm really keen to see more of the detailing and design options that we've got available to us now. This was very focused on sort of the new industry mechanics and upgrading modular service blocks, all the new traffic flows and overlays and air pollution that we've got to play with. which is cool. Definitely a fun part of the game, but it's not where the most fun lies to me. Like I said, huge aesthetic player. I like to build big, beautiful cities, so I really want to see more detailing options. Do we have a prop line tool? Do we have industrial props this time around? Massive fingers crossed for vanilla industrial props. Desperately needed. So we'll of course wait and see for that. So let's also take a look at the Steam listing for Cities 2 as well. There's a couple of little extra screenshots on here that we haven't seen before. We can see a tram with a colossal order symbol on it as well, which is cool. And tram lines crossing over a pretty major suspension arch as well, which is cool. There's also another one down here as well. These are a lot of the leaked screenshots that came out the other week. Another really great perspective of $2 city here as well. There's also what appears to be a little American football pitch down here too, near to the stadium, so perhaps a return for varsity sports it would look like. And then we've also got this shot here as well, which shows off an inner city shot where we can see that Leto Electronics made it into Cities 2 as well, alongside some pharmacy advertising. And a little parking sign, but much more realistic vehicles, vans, kind of smart looking cars, saloons, etc., motorbikes too. So really cool to see a much more realistic selection of vehicles in here. So we can see here from the description that, you know, every decision has an impact. Can you energize local industry while also using trade to boost the economy? What will make residential districts flourish without killing the buzz downtown? How will you meet the needs and desires of citizens while balancing the city's budget? So kind of going back to what I said earlier, it definitely seems a lot more city simulation focused from what we've seen in a minute. I'd like to see some more city building mechanics hopefully in the upcoming reveals. And then we can also see that an ever-expanding community of builders means more opportunities to build a truly groundbreaking city with mods. So I think we're definitely going to have just an active workshop, if not more active than CS1 has, especially with all the focus that's on Cities 2 at the minute. Deep simulation, AI, and intricate economics mean your choices ripple through the fabric of the city. Remember that as you strategize, problem solve, and react to change, challenges, and opportunities. So I'm not entirely sure what that's going to come down to in terms of gameplay mechanics. Like, are we going to have to kind of stop building and go off and fix a massive problem? Or is it a case of just ticking a box and then the simulation will resume and everyone's happy again? Just quite keen to see how in-depth that deep simulation exactly is. And then we can also see the decisions as well for citizens' life path, a chain of events that defines who they are, from love and loss to wealth and well-being, follow their lives up and down. There's something that I've noticed here which is kind of giving me, I don't know, I guess an indication of the timeline. Let's have a look at this screenshot, for example. So we're seeing a specific time and date here. For example, it's 7 minutes to 6 in the evening. And the loss rates here for both population and the economy are both per hour, which is quite interesting, I thought. So I'm guessing we're going to be playing with a much slower simulation. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to translate. For example, if we were to use the Cities 2 version of Play It and slow time down, is that really going to affect the simulation of the city? Is everything is now based on an hourly rate as opposed to a weekly rate like it is in CS2? I'm interested to see how that is going to translate into the game. So before we wrap the video up, I just want to have a little stop by the official Cities 2 page on Paradox now that this video has released, because there is some planned sort of features reveals coming soon as we move closer towards the release date. So we look forward to some road tools, so we'll hopefully get a better explanation of how that parallel tool is going to work alongside what those new tool icons actually do. The second one we'll get will be the traffic AI. That will hopefully be the reveal of some kind of integrated traffic president mod into the game. Then public and cargo transportation is up after that. Zones and signature buildings. Signature buildings has been mentioned a couple of times across these trailers and comments and screenshots and whatnot, so I'm assuming they're now unique buildings. I haven't really seen uniques mentioned in anything now. It seems to be signature buildings, so that's what I'm taking that to mean. After that, we'll receive more on city services, where hopefully we'll get a bit of a breakdown as to exactly how those modular upgrades are going to work. Does everyone have to piece it together the same way, or can you place them anywhere? I'm quite keen to know about that, really. After that, we will hear about electricity and water, which isn't massively exciting, but, you know, might be nice to see how it differs, and water pipes and power lines are going to work. Hopefully we'll have some new power lines to play with, not just enormous pylons. It would be nice to have a little bit more of a rural power pole. After that one, we're going to get maps and themes, so we're going to get a comparison of the map sizes, which is really cool. And yes, there we go, we can see now that you are able to unlock almost all tiles, giving you a whopping total of 441 map tiles, so definitely seems to be much bigger maps now. It's going to be interesting to see how that affects people's PCs and how the consoles handle that too. Then the 8th feature will be on climate and seasons, which is going to be very fun and interesting to see how that works and exactly what changes with the season. If it's just an aesthetic change, or if it's going to be totally gameplay, maybe fields will stop working in the winter, for example. We'll have to wait and see, of course. The 9th feature will be on economy and production, and then we'll move up to the citizen simulation and life path on the 10th feature. So apparently each citizen has their own life path. They either move into the city or are born there. If they're happy, they'll stay. If they don't like it, they'll go. Again, it's cool that that stuff is in there, but for me, in the moment gameplay, when I'm building a city, I don't really care about that sort of stuff. It's just not for me. Then feature 11, game progression, also will be covered as well. Then sound and music, and then cinematic camera and photo mode. Very happy for that. Of course, I make a lot of very cinematic city stuff with our YouTube Let's Plays. So having an inbuilt cinematic camera is tremendously handy for me. And that's all that's covered on the official Paradox site. I will leave that link down below if you want to go and check it out for yourself. So now we'll move on to some of the pre-order stuff that's been confirmed after this trailer dropped. And expansion passes are already available for purchase, and this is just sort of modern day publishing, isn't it? You know, sort of day one DLCs and expansion passes and premium models are now available for pretty much every game. It's not something that bothers me too much, just because I get, you know, so much value for money out of Cities Skylines. You know, you can go to the cinema with 2 people, pay for your food and your tickets and your transport, and you've spent probably £100 for, you know, what, 3 hours worth of entertainment. So I definitely get value for money out of Cities, but I can also understand why people are annoyed by this too. But it's modern day publishing. You either accept it or you don't, do you? So there's not really too much you can argue with. But I do understand why people are a little bit pissed off with the announcement of essentially day one expansion passes and DLC. And we also have content creator packs confirmed as well, so it does seem that Cities will be maintaining its current kind of DLC model of major expansions from Colossal Order. And then, of course, the wonderful community that is Cities Skylines will create content creator packs for us to enjoy as well. But otherwise, guys, that's kind of it. It's a really fun, exciting trailer. We'll definitely keep up to date with Cities 2 news on the channel as it comes out. And if you are new to the channel, please do go ahead and check out some of our Let's Plays. We've got many vanilla and modded cities on the channel for you to enjoy. And of course, we'll continue that trend into Cities 2 when it drops. So we'll cover news as it comes out. Please let me know what you think of this down below. Are you excited? Is there anything that you noticed that I might have missed today? Is there anything that's really annoyed you? Something that you're not looking forward to at all? Let me know. Let's get a little discussion going in the comments, and we'll see how the development of Cities Skylines 2 progresses. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.